Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the other side of Rock Bottom. If you're new here, my name is Kathy, and this channel is all about real stories, real recovery, and real hope. Because I truly believe no matter how far gone we think we are, there's always a way back. Today's guest is someone I'm really excited to introduce to you. Andrew is a certified recovery coach and the founder of Dope to Hope, which stands for Drugs Over Personal Evolution to Helping Other People Evolve. And I just love that because it speaks to exactly what recovery is all about: transformation, purpose, and giving back. His mission is to recover out loud, to be a light for those still in the darkness, and to show people how incredible life can be on the other side. Andrew, I'm so grateful you're here. Welcome to the other side of Rock Bottom.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about you. Who are you today? What does life look for you right now?
Life looks a whole lot different, over these last 25 months for sure. I love my life. I can say that now, without a shadow of a doubt. Like I've said that in the past, but didn't really mean it. I just said it because it was cliche and because you don't want people to think anything, I'm saying like weird or whatever. So, but like I love my life today. I'm certified recovery coach. I'm a metal fabricator. I've got a pretty decent job. I just I take care of my cats. I'm a present father now for my two adult children that are grown up. So I'm rebuilding my relationship and building a stronger and better relationship with them. Uh, making amends and rebuilding relationships with the rest of my family and stuff like that. And just being a good contributing member to society, and also, trying to be a voice for the recovery community as well, to show other people that recovery is possible, that change is possible, that we can and we do recover, and I want to be that beacon of light for somebody else that's still stuck in the dark, so
Absolutely. So let me ask you a question. What does the name Dope to Hope mean to you personally? How'd that come about?
really that's my journey from addiction to recovery in an acronym, basically. You know, like you said, drugs over personal evolution, because that's what a lot of us in addiction that we choose. We choose the drugs and we choose the suffering and we choose to numb ourselves instead of growth and accountability and change and evolution. You know what I'm saying? So that and then the two hope, helping other people evolve, because that's where I'm at in my recovery journey today, and in my life today. It's like I just said a minute ago, I recover out loud for those that are still suffering in the darkness, and I want to bring hope and to be, a hope for those that are still suffering in darkness, to show them that recovery is possible, and to show them how much wonderful, that being on this side of life is and can be. I love my recovery and I love everything that I'm blessed and grateful to be able to do, what I'm saying, nowadays, that I didn't think was possible just, a little over 2 years ago. If
Right.
you'd have told me when I first got clean, or even right before I got clean, the months leading up to that, that I was going to be where I'm at today, like I would have laughed hysterically and told you were out of your freaking mind. So yeah, Dope to Hope, that's a brand that I launched, and we'll talk about that later. But like, yeah, that is in a nutshell, like that is my journey in that acronym. So, and
Uh-huh.
that's where it came from. It just came to me one day, as I was piddling around on Canva, trying to think of some different things, because you see all these other people that are in recovery and like these other businesses that are recovery based, like clothing and apparel and merchandise and stuff. And I was like, I want to do something like that. And I've always had an artistic mind and stuff. I took all four arts in high school, and really should have probably done graphic design and stuff like that. But yeah, so that was just the artistic part of my mind, coming out, and this is what came of it. So
Amazing. Amazing. So, all right, we'll learn more about that a little bit later. So, I want you to take us back. What was life like for you before addiction took hold?
um, well, it was like before I got addicted to the meth, I was really, I was a decent father, you know what I'm saying, like to my kids. Like we had a mixed family. Me and my ex, she had her son, her one son from another relationship. I had my two boys. You know, we had an apartment. Um, I mean, we had several cats, and like we just, I mean, we were like a normal family. Like I would take the boys to church. She would come with her son sometimes, you know, but like I was active in the church. I was a Catholic back then, so I was a Knight of Columbus, you know, handing out Tootsie Rolls and doing all kinds of other things. You know what I'm saying? Like being active in the church, being a good Christian dad. Um, you know, I you know paid my bills on time. Like I was a responsible person. I was just a normal, you know, your normal family man. You know, essentially. And you know, like I helped out with my family and stuff like that also, you know, and uh you know, I worked second shift a lot. So during the week, I wasn't there when the boys got off the bus, but on the weekends, you know what I'm saying, when I had weekends off and stuff, we were outside in the yard playing football or baseball, kickball, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? We would take family trips up to the mountains or to a park, you know what I'm saying, and like go hiking, playing in the creek, doing all this kind of stuff, you know. I mean, just your regular everyday stuff really pretty much. So
Okay.
but
I actually, believe it or not, want to back it up even further.
okay.
What was life like for you growing up?
Um I was your typical average, you know, kid that was growing up in, you know, rural, you know, middle class America, basically. You know, I had both my parents in the home. Uh, both my parents are still together to this day, actually. And, you know, so I had a normal childhood. It wasn't anything, you know, traumatic. I've had ADHD my whole life. I took Ritalin and Adderall from kindergarten all the way up to 10th grade. Um, So, but because of that, I always felt really socially awkward and things like that. And this is stuff I've just discovered, you know, doing deep dive sessions for myself over the last several months. Like, but so I always struggled with self confidence and I always felt kind of awkward and had trouble making friends and all that kind of thing and stuff. So, you know, we're all, you know, I mean, I played sports, I played baseball and basketball all through school, like not for the school, but like in the rec leagues and stuff like that. I was a lifeguard for 4 years, the last 2 years of high school, and then 2 years after I graduated high school at the YMCA and at the outdoor pool that we have here in Lincolnton where I live. Um, I mean, I was just your typical, you know what I'm saying, like kid growing up and teenager too. You know, I mean, we all, most of us, anyways, you know, we all piddle around and party, you know, with drinking and smoking pot and things like that in high school or in college and whatever, you know, and I did that too. And um, I got when I went to college, Lincolnton's a small town. Charlotte, I went to King's College, which was like a business school. They came to our high school and, you know, talked about, you know, hey, if you come here, you can go for 18 months and you get the equivalent of a 2 year degree, but you get it 6 months faster. And we're guaranteed to give you job placement. You know, it's a job starting out like between 45 and $55,000 a year. Well, shoot, in 2003, that was a lot of money. You know what I mean? Like back then, you know, today $55,000 is not that much, you know, but I mean back then, when you're 20 years old, you know, 19 or 20 years old, like that's a lot of money coming straight out of school. So I was like, heck yeah, I'm going to do that, you know. So I went for computer programming, um, moved to Charlotte. They had like a stipend program where you could either drive to school every day, like commute back and forth to school, or you could stay in these off-campus apartments if you were a guy, like, and they would give you a stipend check that would pay your rent and your power bill and every month and stuff. All you had to do was pay your groceries, and you know, if you wanted cable or internet or whatever, you know what I'm saying, you had to pay for that stuff too. But they paid your rent and your utilities. So that's what I did. I roomed with a guy. He was a really good guy, and you know, but I got in with the wrong crowd down there, and you know, because I wanted to be liked. So our apartment quickly went from being just our normal apartment, you know, like our apartment was then the place to come and hang out and party and get wild and whatever, you know. And uh, in the 9 months that I lived in Charlotte back then, we went through 65 bottles of liquor, and that's not counting the cases of beer, the That's not counting the cases of beer, the 22 ounces, the 40 ounces, and the Jello shooters that we would steal off of the waitresses' trays when we were inside the clubs too. So,
Right.
and so like there was a lot of partying going on, and it got to be about 8 months in, or 7 months in. I guess it was March of 2003. Uh, uh, they called me into the office and they were like, Andrew, you're failing all your classes. Your GPA is like a 1.25 or something like that. They were like, you really need to do a lot of work or you're going to flunk out of, of, of our program here, your program here. And I was like, okay. And they were like, if you need tutoring, we have that available. If you need help, we're willing to give you, extensions and blah, 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 and stuff like that on, uh, on your projects and things like that, so you can try and get back on track. We don't want to kick you out unless we absolutely have to, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So like they really wanted to work with me, but at that point I was like, I'm not ready to quit partying yet. I mean, this was too, and plus I didn't want to be like, guys, we can't come hang out here anymore, because I really need to try and do school and everything like that. Like everybody else could do it and could keep their grades up. I was not like that. So yeah, I ended up quitting the next month because I wasn't going to let myself flunk out, you know. So I quit and came back home, and I really ran from that for about a couple of years, where I got real heavy. I started doing ecstasy and also got into cocaine really bad, and did that for a couple of years. Um, and had a couple minor run-ins with the law, and was like, and my parents told me, either you're going to straighten up, or you're not going to have a place to live. So I straightened up to an extent. I still did drink and smoke pot and stuff, but not, I quit doing the cocaine and the ecstasy and things like that. um I met the mother of my two kids that stayed behind where we live at in the neighborhood here, and they weren't any good either. I mean, I just got right back into partying and doing cocaine and uh, Xanaxes and pills and stuff and alcohol at that point. So, and then I had my first son when I was 21 years, 1 month, and 20 days old. So I was a baby, essentially, a kid having a kid. Um, she was 2 years younger than me. So, and then I tried my best to clean up. I was being a responsible dad, whatever. And then we had my youngest son. He's my miracle child, is what I call him, because he was 8 weeks early. When he was born, they found cocaine and pot in her system. He was born 8 weeks early. Like I said, like when he was born, he was like, I could hold him in my hands like this, like cupped, like he was freaking tiny. Like, um, he was in the NIC unit for about 8 or 9 weeks after that, before he finally got to come home. Um, and that scared me straight pretty much then. Like I was like, okay, no more of this crap. Like I'm done partying. I'm done. Like this is like, that's my sign. You know what I'm saying? I need to straighten up, essentially. Because my son almost didn't make it. You know what I mean? Like, and his situation probably could have been a lot worse too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm blessed that he's grown up fairly. He's got ADHD like me, and he's got some other issues now, but that's from, I think, other stuff, him growing up. But like, it could have been a lot worse, and I'm very grateful that it wasn't. So like, I straightened up for a few years. We split up. I ended up getting custody of the kids because she would rather go out and party and hang out and do whatever, you know what I mean? So I took both the boys and moved back here to my parents' house, and then I met my ex, who introduced me to crystal meth, and that's what started all that. And so that was, and when we started doing crystal meth, it wasn't like, we just dove head first in. Like, she was already doing it, and I found out in a to any normal person, that would be like major red flags and alarms going off and stuff, like run the other way as fast as you can, you know what I mean? But me being the people pleaser and me being like a fixer or whatever, I was like, oh, I could save her, I could help her, I could help her turn her life around, blah blah blah. Like, yeah, that didn't work out so well. Um, so she was like, kept pressuring me, and finally I just gave in one night and I did it. And what do you think of it? And I was like, it's freaking awesome. I mean, like, I love the feeling. Like, it was like my Adderall or my Ritalin, times like 1,000, pretty
Mm-hmm.
much. Like my old ADHD medicine, which I hadn't taken in like 10 years at that point. And meth floods your brain with, I think it's like 1,800% more dopamine than what a line of cocaine does, like, which is like inside that. Don't quote me on that, but it's something crazy number like that. Like, um, so I was, and it started off after we moved into our apartment, at the end of the month, all our bills were paid. It was like, hey, we got some extra money, like, let's, go get us a little bag this weekend. So it was like a quarter gram, like, or a half a gram, like once a month, 2 or 3 days. And that would last us for like a week, because
Mm-hmm.
it was a lot more potent back then. And because our tolerances were not built up that much. Right. And, so that continued on for like 3 or 4 years, and then it started to kind of take a turn for the worse about 2014, 2015. But so, and then in 2013, that's right, that's right. So,
Okay, so what you're talking about when it got, would you say this is your rock bottom you're coming up on then?
oh no, 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 no.
Not yet. I was
It
gonna say many
got
rock
worse.
bottoms
Yeah,
got many trap doors.
yeah, exactly. Well, my rock bottom had a basement or two basements, maybe even. So yeah.
Right. Okay, well then continue on.
So in 20, I think 2015 is when we really started getting bad off, and like it just got to where the tolerances was more and more and more. We went from it being a quarter ounce once a month, or a half, or I mean a quarter gram or a half gram, to like once a month, to like it was a half gram every week, and then a gram every week, and then a 16th every week, and then an 8 ball every week, and whatever, and like just on and on and on. And the snowball effect really started taking turn then. And 2016, the summer of 2016, I was going to get, when I was going to see the guy, I was picking up like a half ounce, and we were splitting that with one other person. So I was doing about a quarter ounce to myself pretty much at that time. I mean, which is a gram a day pretty much. And that was smoking it, doing hot rails, whatever. Um, and we lost the apartment because of some issues with our cats and the neighbors in 2016. So we went and lived in a motel for a little while where she worked at for about 3 months. Then I came home to my parents. She went home to her parents. And February of 2017, I bought a house. And this is where the first rock bottom really hits, I guess, is 2017, February of 2017, I buy a house. Um, and was clean for about the first 3 months. And about 3 months in, we still had boxes and bins everywhere, throughout the house, because no energy, right? Still really trying to learn how to live life without that get up and kind of go that meth gives you. And so we decided, like, okay, well, if we're gonna do anything, if we're really gonna get all this stuff unpacked, like, we need to get us a bag. And then it was like off to the races after that. It was all she wrote pretty much. So February 2017, I buy the house. October of 2018, a year and a half later, house is foreclosed. Um, so because I chose to feed my addiction instead of be responsible and pay my bills and pay my mortgage payment. And I remember one time I went to go see the guy I was getting it from, and I told him, I said, dude, I'm gonna start having Quicken Loans call you, and send you the letters for my mortgage payments. He's like, why would you do that? I was like, because every 2 weeks I'm bringing you a freaking mortgage payment, bro. Like, you need to start making that for me. I'm not doing that for you. I meant it in a joking sense, but I was also kind of being serious too, like, and especially when I started getting the foreclosure letters and stuff like that in the mail. And I had lost my job at that time because I pointed out, this was in February of 2018. Well, I was going to go file for bankruptcy and actually started the process of filing for bankruptcy, because if I did that, I could save my house essentially. I didn't have a job. She did. So I was going to use her income. Well, the week before, I was supposed to go sign the papers for the bankruptcy and, like, show them her income and all that kind of stuff, and was like, was actually going to get the bankruptcy and, like, stop the foreclosure process on the house. She lost her job. So, yeah. So that was like the first, like, low point. And then it was like, well, fuck, if I'm losing my house, I'm definitely not going to get clean now. Like, because I was just so guilt tripping, a lot of shame, a lot of disappointment I felt, really, for letting not only myself down, but for letting both my boys down, for letting my parents down and the rest of my family, because they came up, when I signed the papers and we moved in that day, standing out in the driveway, I had both my parents, like, one of the happiest days of my life, next to having my kids, probably, when both of them were born, was them standing in the driveway and giving me a hug and saying, congratulations, Andrew, we're proud of you. This is, you've done a great job, buying your house, blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. And, like, you feel like you're just over the freaking moon, right? And 18 months later, to be at one of the lowest points of my life was like, that was crushing, really. And, when you're that deep in the throes of addiction and you're in these dark places, deep in dark places, any normal people that were going through that situation together, you know what I'm saying? Like, they would, I would like to think you would, like, pull together and be stronger, and, like, lean on each other for strength and support and all that kind of stuff through those times. But also, situations like that don't really arise for normal people either. I'm saying, there's that aspect too. So, but instead of us coming together as we should have, that made us push each other away more, and we went deeper into our own respective holes that we were in, as individuals. And so that deteriorated our relationship there. We moved into a shed on the dope man's property for about 4.5 months, and lived there. And then we got kicked out of his property by his old lady, who said she didn't want us there. And, we had a drop cord run across the yard, and we had a power strip for some lamps and a TV and stuff like that. We had an old kerosene heater, like one of the big, tall, round, cylindrical ones or whatever, from like the 70s or something like that, that we had. We almost died of carbon monoxide poisoning one night, because, well, we had an argument about leaving the windows cracked for air circulation. And she woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't get her lighters to work. She threw like 6 of them off of the loft where our bed was at, and I'm in the recliner underneath, and I'm hollering up to her, "What in the hell are you doing throwing the lighters?" And she's like, "I can't get none of them to work." Blah 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 blah. Like, and at this time, like, I'm sitting up in my recliner, and I'm like, "Ooh, I feel, lightheaded or whatever." And she's like, "Do any of your torches work?" And I was like, "Hold on." And I got mine out of my pocket and I struck it, and it wasn't lighting. And I was like, "Hold on a minute," and I go and open the door, because it's like the double doors that swing, like, I opened one and swung it open and let it sit there for about 10 seconds. And she's hollering, cussing, whatever. Why are you doing it? You're letting all the heat out. Like, I was like, just hold on a minute, struck my lighter then and it lit. And I was like, you dummy. Like, we almost freaking died. So that was a scary thing. She went back, but after we left that, all of my sentimental stuff, like yearbooks, pictures from high school friends and college and things like that, all of the art stuff that I did when I was in high school, and like any other drawings and artistic stuff that I had done in my sketchbooks and paintings, like that I'd done from high school and college, like all through my adult life, like was in that shed. Well, after we got kicked off the property, it was hard for us to go back and get stuff because one, we didn't really have anywhere else to put it, didn't have money for a storage build, or whatever. So it was kind of like a good faith thing, hoping nothing was going to happen to that stuff.
Right.
And a couple weeks later, somebody called and said, "Hey, so and so, broke in. The doors are wide open on your building over here. You might want to come check it out." And go check it out. And all of our stuff's been dumped in the floor, ransacked through papers and drawings, and all my stuff is everywhere. Like, stuff's gone. Like, I'm heartbroken and crushed again, over that. Like, because here's all my sentimental stuff for my whole life that's just ransacked through and whatever, and uh we ended up torching all of it. Like, we had some kerosene that was still in there from the last time we stayed there, like a month before, and I just dumped it on a bunch of stuff and tossed the tank in the back corner, and I lit it, and we turned around and left. And that was really that signified more. It signified a couple different things for me. One was the relationship with her that was going up in flames, essentially, because everything that we had built together, and we had made, and all our sentimental stuff was also in that shed, so our memories over the last 10, 11 years, what I'm saying, were going up in flames. So I was like, well, there goes that. And then also all the stuff from my life, like that I had growing up in high school, college, whatever, what I'm saying, like, is gone now.
Right.
So that was one of the rock bottoms.
Okay. I know there's many. What would
Oh,
you tell me about the one that finally made you say, I can't live like this anymore?
all right. So fast forward to 2023, and I'm living back here at my parents' then, and it was at that time in 2023, fentanyl had found its way into everything, essentially. I mean, it's in pot, it's in cocaine, it's in, not just heroin and fentanyl by itself, like, it's in everything, even
Mm-hmm.
crystal meth, right? And there were several people, like 3, 4, 5 people maybe, in the I guess, like, the circle of people that I knew and that I had seen in and out of the trap trailers and trap houses that I'd been to get my stuff, like, that had gotten bags that were laced with fentanyl and had died from fentanyl poisoning. So I had this argument with myself all of 2023. It's like, hey, how much, how many more times are you going to continue to do this, before your luck runs out? Because I essentially knew that I was, every time I went to get a bag every week, I was essentially playing Russian roulette. It was only going to be a matter of time before I was going to pull that trigger and the bullet was going to, per se, fentanyl was going to be in my bag, and then I was going to be dead on the bathroom floor. So I had this argument all through 2023. And I finally told myself, I was driving one day after I was leaving, after getting my bag for the week. And I was like, God, universe, whoever you are up there that's listening to me, that I cannot do this by myself. Like, I can't quit by myself. Like, I need help. I need a clean break somehow, some way, like, if you're up there and you're listening to me, like, help me. November 18th, 2023, that happens. Um, you know, my dope man went to jail over some petty crap or whatever. He was gone for a month. I didn't realize it until after the fact, because hindsight's 2020, you know, that that that's what that was. So a month later, he gets out of jail. I'm the first one he calls because, you know, any other time it's happened over the 5.5 years I had been messing with him, you know, he had always contacted me. Hey man, you know, I'm out, you know, like come pick me up. Let's go run the roads, blah, blah, blah. You know, like let me have some money so I can get straight, da, 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 whatever. And I always did it, you know, and I did this time. And I'm sitting in his bathroom after we get done running the roads. And as I'm rolling that first hit in the bowl, I'm looking at myself in the mirror going, you big dummy, you know, look what you just did. You know, you prayed and begged for this clean break and you had it and you just stood up, you know? So that put a whole nother level of shame and guilt and disappointment on my head, more so than I've already had from everything else that's happened, like ever since I lost the house. Like, um, so I was like, well, you know what? If I can't resist, you know what I'm saying, like that enough, then like I just don't want to even come back. Like, so there were several times between November of 2023 and February 24 when I actually did get clean. Like, I took several drives that I had no intention on coming back from. And the only thing that brought me back from those is when is the picture that would pop up in my mind about the looks on my boys' faces when they heard the news as to what had happened to me. Um, so again, I called out and I was like, okay, I know I screwed up the last one. You know, please help me somehow again, you know, like so the end of January 2024, I take and drop off my money for him to go down the road like I've done hundreds of times over 5.5 years. And for whatever reason, he doesn't call me when he comes back. You know, he stiffs me on my $250. And I'm pretty livid about it. You know, I mean, I'm losing $250. Like, that's not, you know, like, don't play with my money. You know what I mean? So I'm blowing his phone up, texting him, hitting him up, whatever. He's not replying back. I go to his apartment, beating on his door. I can hear him and his old lady and them in the apartment, but they're not answering the door. Makes me even madder. And after about 3 or 4 days of that, I'm like, okay, you know what? Just screw it. I'm done. Like, I delete his numbers, block him on everything, you know, whatever. And as I'm going through the withdrawals and everything, the first week of February, I have a couple different mental breakdowns at work because that, looking back now, I see that was my soul basically like screaming at me, like, Andrew, you've got to do something, you know, like my soul's screaming at me like to wake up and do something, you know, something's got to change. So I was talking to one of my good friends in Asheville that I don't even talk to anymore, but and I'd known her since high school. We'd known each other like 25 years. And she said, you know, I was telling her about how I was feeling, and she was like, she was like, she sent me some lists of some places. She said, I'm going to send you a list of, you know, 4 different places that are in and around your area where you live at. She lives in Asheville, like an hour away. She said, you know, and they're all within 30 or 45 minutes of a drive for you. So she said, you need to call these places and talk to them, and you need to pick one and you need to go, even if it's for a weekend, even if it's for just 2 or 3 days. She said, you need to go somewhere and get some help. She said, if you don't do that, you know, like, I'm prepared to cut you out of my life because I'm not going to continue to watch you self-destruct and do this to yourself. Like, you deserve better and your boys deserve better. You know, your sister wants to see her big brother get better again. She doesn't like seeing you suffering and stuff like that. And you know Tristan and Jacob want to see you do better. You know, they don't need to see you suffering like that anymore. So that really shook me pretty hard. because you know when you're in addiction and you're, you know, we're used to being able to manipulate people, right, to be able to get
Hmm.
what we want, you know, and we're able to throw those pity parties on them, and they'll be, oh, you know, poor babe, you know, and like they side with us and they kind of enable us in a way, right? Her standing up to me and saying she was not going to watch her friend watch me do that to myself anymore, like, was really like, you know, at first I was like, how dare she do this, you know? Like,
Hmm.
what did she do, you know? But looking back, I'm very glad that she did, because that really shook me up. And like, I thought about things, and I had a couple different mental breakdowns at work, and it was like, I never went to ask for help before in 2023, because I figured if I went and mentioned something at work and tried to talk to them at work and explain to them what was going on, that they were going to be like, oh, you're admitting to being, you know, high, to using drugs on the clock, blah, blah, blah. Like, well, you know, we don't need your services anymore. You know, screw you, pack your stuff and get out of here. At this point in February of 2024, I was just, I was at the point where I was like, I don't even care. Like, either I'm going to go tell them and explain to them what's going on, and like what's going on in my mind, and like what I feel like I need to do. And they're either going to support me and they're going to help work, they're going to work with me on keeping my job while I go seek help and treatment for this, or they're going to let me go and I'm going to go seek treatment anyway. You know, I was at that point, it was like, you know, like you, it's not, you know, the worst they're going to say is no, Andrew. So go see what they say. So I went and talked to my supervisor at the time, and he asked me if I had spoken to the HR manager, and I said no. I wanted to come to you first because you're my supervisor, you know. And he said, well, let's go in here and let's talk to HR. Let's see what we can figure out for you, you know, because it's a small company that I work for, and they're really close knit on, and they're really willing to work with their employees as long as you're upfront and honest with them and stuff. I didn't know that at the time, you know. I mean, every company says that, you know, oh, we want to work with you, we want to help you, but like when push comes to shove, a lot of times they're like, yeah, okay, no, not so much. You know what I mean? So I
Right.
was really wary of that, but at this point, I didn't have nothing else to lose, so I did. We actually ended up deciding on FMLA no pay, so I could take off, you know, up to 6 months if I needed to. They would hold my job. I wouldn't get paid for any of this time out, but I also wouldn't lose my vacation and my sick days either. So while I was gone, all they asked was that while I was out of work was to keep them posted on to how things were progressing and this, that, and the other. And, you know, if I did go seek treatment somewhere, send them the address, and, you know, they gave me the papers to give to them so they could email back to my work, you know, to be able to document it for the FMLA stuff. Um, so that's what I did. I signed in on a Thursday morning. I was there for 2.5 days. I signed myself out on Saturday afternoon and came home. And because those 2.5 days is all I needed, you know, I read Happy, Happy, Happy by Phil Robertson twice. um, I paced the hallways on Friday, you know, like 85 times. And the one nurse that was behind the counter or whatever, she was like, you know, are you anxious? You know, like, are you anxious about something? Because you really look like you're anxious. Pace. And I was like, do I look anxious? Yeah, of course I'm anxious. Like, I'm stuck in this place, you know, like, uh, so, and then I told her, I was like, do you have something, you know, do you want something for your anxiety? I was like, I want you to give me something to knock me out where I don't know I'm here. And she was like, okay, we can do that for you. So she fed me a Dilaudid, knocked me on my ass. I went to bed after I took that and laid down. I woke up for snack that afternoon, went back to bed for 3 hours, woke up for dinner, ate dinner, went back to bed, went back for night snack at 9 o'clock, and then come back to bed. And, you know, and then the next morning I woke up on Saturday, and they had mentioned whenever I signed myself in that, you know, they did teledoc visits on Saturdays for anybody that wanted one, whether it was counseling or you wanted to talk to a doctor about this, or, you know, yada yada yada. So I did. And when I woke up, I was like, hey, when do y'all do these teledoc visits? And they were like, we're going to start about 10 o'clock. You know, why? Do you want one? I was like, yeah. What do you want to talk to them about? I need to sign an AMA form because I'm ready to go home. You've not been here for the full 36 hours. I don't care. I know what I need to do, because by then I'd had all these epiphanies and light bulbs and stuff going off in my head. Like, I know what I need to do now to fix my life. Okay. So, like, and me sitting in here is only making it worse. It is only just ticking time off the clock. Like, I'm ready to go home and get started on this now. And they were like, okay, you know what? So about 11 o'clock, 11:30, I have my teledoc thing, and he explained, the whole AMA form and blah 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 and all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, please, just give me my paper so I can sign so I can get out of here. And I did, and I came home, and it's just been hit the ground running ever since. I mean, it's been on like Donkey Kong, like,
All
really.
right. So,
So,
what are some things that you're doing to grow in your recovery, to learn tools and things like that? What are some areas what are some things you do
like back then, like
today?
in my early recovery, or
No, today.
oh,
Today.
oh,
Well, yeah, then and today, both.
oh, okay. Well, back then, I knew stuff had to change, and I knew that, I had this epiphany in there that, like, I was 39 and a half years old at that time. I was like, you're going to be 40 years old this summer. You know, you're past the halfway point on your life, Andrew. So, like, what are you really doing with yourself? And I came to that realization. It was like, like, I really need to fix this, because, hell, I'm only living one time. And, like, what have I done with my life up to this point other than be a screw up, you know, and be a disappointment? It was like something else has got to give. So I was like, maybe, Andrew, you need to really give this recovery thing a chance. Maybe you need to start looking at all the stuff you've been running from in your life, you know, start learning how to heal from that, and start fixing the things that make you want to go back and use, like, whenever stuff gets hard or whatever. So, I did. I started changing the people, places, and things. You know what I'm saying? I started being a homebody, just staying here at home, like, trying to be there for my kids and, like, talk to them and, like, start rebuilding that relationship with them and stuff. And I started walking. I weighed 255 back then when I first got clean. And my blood pressure was like 180 something over like 115. Um, so I knew I needed to start doing something to try and get in better shape too. So I started walking. One lap around the neighborhood here at my parents' is a half a mile. So I could only do a half a mile, maybe a mile on a good day back then. Nowadays, I can walk like 6 miles a day. Um, I used to eat fast food like 10 times a week, 10 or 12 times a week. Over like 75% of my meals was fast food back then. And I lived a very sedentary lifestyle. That's why my blood pressure was so high and why I was so overweight. I used to drink 8 to 10 sodas a day. When I came home, that 2 days in at RHA at the substance abuse place was the equivalent to me when I used to play Nintendo growing up. You're about to die and get a game over. You reach up and you hit the reset button. That's what that 2.5 days was to me. Like, it helped break the me going to get fast food, helped me break drinking all the sodas and everything, because all they had in there to drink was some nasty tea, some really nasty Kool-Aid, and water.
Right.
So, that got me off of that kick. And so I came home and I stopped eating fast. Like, I didn't go get fast food for like 3 months. I think I quit. I cut out all the sodas. All I drank was water. If I went out to eat somewhere, I would have a sweet tea, but that was it. Um, you know, and so the first year of my recovery, I dropped right at 40 pounds. So I went from 255 to 215 in a matter of like 13 months.
Mhm.
Um, and I still walk. Like, that. You have to have, to me, and I've heard other people say this before too. You have to have non-negotiables, like, that. That you do regardless. It doesn't matter how bad you feel. Doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? If you want to do it, or if you'd rather stay home and scroll on your phone or not. You know what I'm saying? Like, you get up and you do these things. Like, for me, that's going on my walk. I don't care if it's 20 degrees outside. I don't care if it's 95 degrees and 95% humidity, because I live in North Carolina, so we get hot here in the summertime. You
Mm.
know, I'm still out there every day, every afternoon, you know what I'm saying, like walking, because I when I after about a month or so, I realized not only was it making me feel better physically, but it was making me feel better like mentally, for my mental
Right.
clarity and my mental health and stuff too. Like getting outside and listening to the birds and the squirrels hollering at each other, birds chirping and singing, and interacting with people that are out there on the trail and stuff like that, and just the sounds of practicing the mindfulness and things like that, of what's going on around you and stuff, like how much better that having sunlight on your face, you know, um, that's been one of the biggest things for me since I've gotten in recovery. Like I love going outside. Like I love finding new places to walk. Like I go
Right.
on Saturdays and Sundays, like I'll go up to Hickory, 30 minutes away, and I'll walk on one of the like 10 different trails, that walking trails that they have up there. I'll go to, somewhere else 20 minutes away and walk on their Greenway Trail or whatever. Like I do that, because that's what I love to do. Like, and it's, yeah.
It's
So
important
that is one.
finding the life. I mean,
Yeah.
recovery is not just about not using.
Yeah.
It's about building a life we no longer want to escape from.
That yep, exactly right. I mean, getting clean, putting down the drugs and the alcohol is like this little fraction of it.
A little piece of it,
Yes,
yes.
for sure. I mean that's part of it, yes. But when you start fixing and you start looking at all the things that you run from, and you start understanding why you began to use and why you did all this stuff, I mean,
Yes.
like people, like I like to pick I like to pick people's brains on stuff, because you see people posted in groups all the time, addiction is a disease, it's not a choice. Like, well, it's a choice. There's a really big gray area there, because it's so
Hmm.
different for each individual. For me, I mean, there were times that I knew what I was doing was wrong. Like I could look in the mirror and be like, Andrew, what the hell are you doing? But like, you can't stop yourself just because
Can't
you're
stop.
stuck in those habits and you're stuck in that way of life. Like, and it's hard to break those loops and those cycles. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but once you learn how to break those cycles, and once you learn how to break out of those loops, and you start becoming self-aware of all this stuff like that, it helps tremendously to be able to change your life,
For sure. For sure. Well, speaking of changing lives, tell me before we get ready to close out, tell me a little bit more about your organization.
All right. So Dope to Hope, that's a brand I come up with, like I said, last year sometime, when I was taking my when I signed up at the start of 2025. I signed up for a health and life coach certification class, because I was told by several people, have you ever thought about being a speaker? Like, yeah, I have, but I don't know about getting up in front of, a bunch of people and talking and stuff like that. That, like, I mean, if God puts that on my heart, that's what I'm supposed to do. Okay, yeah, I'll do it. You know what I mean? But like, I myself, like, no, I don't see myself getting up in front of hundreds of people, you know what I'm saying, and talking about stuff or whatever. But so that, you should be a coach, because you have, good, you can motivate people, and like, you're living the light, like you're living, and you're walking the walk and talking the talk, essentially, I guess, is a good way to put it.
Right.
And to be able to help people that are wanting better results in their life and stuff like that, like you're doing the same thing, like you're living it, so you can be like, hey, look, I'm doing this right now, you know what I mean, so like, follow me, kind of thing. So I was thinking of like what my coaching business would be, and like I saw something about dope and hope somewhere, something, and I was like, dope to hope. I was like, dope to hope. I was like, how would I even, like, I was like, I need to make that an acronym somehow. I was like, what can we do? And then I came up with the Drugs Over Personal Evolution to Helping Other People Evolve. And I was like, that's it right there. I was like, that's the freaking winner. I was like, I can put that on business cards. I could put that on shirts, you know what I'm saying, whatever. And people be like, what's Dope to Hope? Like, oh, I'm glad you asked. You know what I mean? Like, let me tell you about it, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So, like, and I wear these, like, I've got my shirt on right now. You know what I mean? Like, and the first one, this is my first one. On the back of it, it says, I'm here for it. And that's about being in the present moment, like being right here, right now, like I'm here for it, whatever that looks like for you, whether it's showing up for your kids, whether it's being a better, work person at work, whether it's being a better family member, or a better person for yourself, for your spouse, whatever, you know what I mean? Like I'm here for it. Like it's about living in the present moment, like whatever that it is for you. But so I started that. I've had 2 orders of shirts. I've actually got a couple more designs that I'm in contact. I'm working, trying to get some more quotes and things like that for these other 2 designs of shirts that I'm going to have come out. One of them is like blue and orange paint splatter on the front, and it's going to say Sober AF on the front of it. That's going to be my next ones to come out on a white shirt. But like they're $20, and like I meet people here locally. If they want them, I'll drive an hour or 2 hours to meet somebody, you know what I'm saying? If they're local to me here, like $20. And then other than that, it's $20 plus whatever shipping is,
Right.
But the proceeds from the shirts, I keep, and then I redistribute that. I want to start redistributing that like back to other recovery centers, especially not for profit recovery centers that are in my area, because they survive on fundraisers and like government grants and things like that. If you're not for profit, then you're really you rely on donations and things like that most of the time to pay your bills and stuff. So that's the
Right.
ones I really want to help.
Okay.
So that's my vision with it and what I want to do. And like eventually I would like to host, because walking and being outdoors and stuff is so important and close to my heart because of how it's helped me in my recovery journey. I would like to either host or co-host like a 5K or a 10K kind of event, or something like a fundraising event and stuff too. And uh something else my recovery has given me, like dad, he's retired. He's been retired for like 10 years now, almost 8 or 9 years. And he's always played golf off and on, but now he's retired. He plays all the time with his retired buddies. And like, that's a way that I get to spend time with him now too. But
Yeah.
that's also something that, I would be interested in hosting like a fundraiser kind of golf tournament or something like that too. So I've got all these great ideas of where I want to go with it. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm just getting started with it. So, like I just kind of,
Endless possibilities.
yes, for sure. I mean, I leave things open, you know what I'm saying? And like God leads me where I'm supposed to go, and he'll put it on my heart, or he'll put it in my mind, or he will put the right people in front of me and in my life and connect me to these people that will, help me down this path. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and that's something else that I've got in my recovery that I've learned to lean heavily on, like over the last 8 or 9 months, like is rekindling my relationship with God. Like,
Mhm.
because for a long time I was really mad at him about, like, why do you let all this bad stuff happen to me? Why did you not save me? Why did you not, why did you let me lose my house? Why did you let me do that? Why did you let this happen? Blah, blah, blah. Like, and when I finally got clean, that was one of the epiphanies I had in that 2.5 days was, well, you big dummy, he let it happen because it's your own damn fault. You know what I mean? Like I finally looked at myself in the mirror and I said, oh, that's why he let it happen, because it wasn't him that was doing that. That was me. And that
Right.
was the devil that was doing all that stuff. It wasn't God,
Mm.
you know. I mean, if I'm
Okay.
not trying, if I'm not trying to better my life, God's not going to help me, But
You're absolutely right.
when He sees us putting forth the effort, then He will put forth the effort. I mean, our relationship with God is a two-way street, just like everything else in life. You know.
Yep. You're
So,
absolutely right. So let me ask you one final question, my friend. Um, what does the other side of rock bottom mean to you?
a love for life and a love for yourself, for myself. You know, like I was probably 4, maybe 5 months clean, and I was walking out of the bathroom. I just happened to turn and look at the mirror, and I looked at myself like a good, long, hard look. And I looked at myself and I said, for the first time, since before crystal meth stuff started, I looked at myself. I said, hey, I love you, man. You're a really good dude, and you're doing a kick ass job. And I gave myself a high five in the mirror. and like I smiled real big and I walked out, and like I started doing that like every time I went into the bathroom, like every time I was in the shower and got out, before I walked every morning before I went to work, like, hey, I love you, man. You're freaking awesome. And like give myself a high five in the mirror. And I still do it today,
Mhm.
you know. Um, so yeah, loving life and loving yourself. And yeah, I mean, and an attitude of gratitude, really, because you've
Yes.
got to have that too, because I know now, looking back over everything, I was always stressing over, well, I don't have this, I don't have that, and when you're always in that attitude, or you're in that, when you're always looking at things like you don't have stuff, you're never going to have enough. But when you start looking, when you change that and you reframe that and you start looking at all the things you have to be grateful for, your mindset and your attitude just, I mean, through the freaking roof, like on the positive side of the chart. You know what I mean? So
It's
yeah,
life
love,
changing.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it really is. And like I practice that every day now, like an attitude of gratitude. That's how I do on my 20-minute drive to work. I give thanks for 10 things that I'm grateful for, and then I I pray for people that need it, and then I set my intentions for the day. I'm like, Lord, I know there's nothing's going to happen today that you and I together can't handle. We're going to go in here to work, and regardless of what happens in here, I'm here for 8 hours, and we're going to make it a freaking amazing day. So let's go make it happen. And I go make it happen, regardless of how terrible work might be that day.
Right. It's
It's
what we
it's
got
made a
to
night.
do.
That's it.
Right. Well, listen, Andrew, my friend, wow. Just wow. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your heart, and your truth. This is
Thank you.
exactly what this platform is about. Real people
Mhm.
showing others that recovery is not only possible, it's powerful. And listen,
Mhm.
to anybody watching right now, if you're struggling, I want you to hear me. You are not too far gone. There is hope, there is healing, and there is life waiting for you on the other side of rock bottom. Listen, make sure to connect with Andrew and check out the Dope to Hope. We'll put all the links and information below in the description so you can follow his journey and support what he's doing. And if you need support, we're here for you. We have meetings every single day, 3 times a day, morning, midday, and evening, because you don't have to do this alone. If this video touched you, helped you, or made you feel a little less alone, please like, share, and subscribe so we can keep spreading hope together. I love you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode of Rock Bottom.
Are you terrified to face tomorrow? Some mornings feel impossible. But even in the darkest moments, hope is closer than you think. You're not alone. There's hope. Written by Kathy Simmons, a certified recovery coach. Welcome to Recovery is your powerful guide to reclaiming your life. With real stories, practical tools, and compassionate insight, this book lights the way, one page at a time. Whether you're beginning, recommitting, or supporting someone through recovery, find hope, clarity, and strength within these pages. Step into your new chapter. Welcome to Recovery. Take the first step. Get your copy of Welcome to Recovery today and begin your journey to hope.